All right. So thanks everybody for joining us. We have the wonderful Dr. Magi Abdul-Masih with us this week. And she used to be also a professor of mine at St. Mary's University in Halifax, where she teaches in the Religious Studies department. Maggie is, I think, very wise, very funny, very kind, and has so much knowledge in so many different things. So I was really excited to ask her to speak a bit about her journey because she started out as a Ph.D. in chemistry in the sciences. And then through the process of her journey, ended up as a scholar of religious studies. And so I was really hoping that she would be willing to share that journey with us. And then we could have a little conversation about sort of these journeys in the direction that life takes us, and we can ask some questions and hopefully just have a really great time. So Maggie, would you like to start by telling us a bit about your journey and how you ended up where you are?
Yes, as I was writing it today and yesterday, I'm like, wow, this is a long journey. And so I hope I won't bore you. But it came in, there were kind of like 6 moments in it. I'll start with the family and how I being raised up. And a lot of the Eastern students would understand. Well, the father was a doctor. My dad was very religious. um, uh, and who studied also the Bible because he was an Orthodox Christian and then decided to become a Catholic. So very religious. My mom was religious, but in a different way, interested in the psychic and the magic and the psychic abilities and stones. And so my mom was more in kind of a particular line, and my brother came, grew up to be like that, and I always thought it was scary, so I kind of kept away from it. And my aunt, who's gonna become my stepmother later on when my mother died, was very Christian, evangelical Christian. She worked as a missionary for 4 years. So her understanding of Christianity was very strict, while my dad was was the Catholic, God loves everyone kind of thing. And I was raised in the nun school from grade 0 to grade 12. So being religious is part of the game. And there was no contrast between my father being a medical doctor and being very religious. That I found that this particular contrast is really a Western question, not so much an Eastern question. And the created order was, of course, that's what manifests the divine, is the created order. And I was thinking today, we had a program, I was raised in Kuwait, so we had a program on TV, and it was a Muslim doctor who would bring a beautiful science world of the animals, the very beautiful colorful fish that you do not see except at the bottom of the sea, or some bird who builds its nest in a most amazing way. And all of that was meant to show us the power of God, that God created everything, even the things that we think are totally useless. I mean, I think cockroaches are useless personally. Then God thought it was a good idea. I don't know why. Haven't figured that out yet. So, and the world was not inanimate. I mean, everything in the world was animate. I mean, you look at the stones, they heal headaches. I carry my cross as a protection. I even carried Saint Christophe for a long time as a protecting, and then discovered that the guy was not real, but that is not the point. But everything was animate. This business of the material as inanimate was something that I think, again, I did not find or see until actually not only in science, but when I went into theology. Okay, Then, so the most major question about God was not the created order, but the issue of evil. You know, people die, people get sick, there are wars. And that was the question for almost all of us, is the question of these bad things that happen. And of course, all these answers that are given. Oh, God knows better. They are in a better place. It's a test. All that is fine. I mean, no, there was never the question of whether God exists or how to prove it. That is taken for granted because the whole world is like that. Then I went. I'm just going to study science so that I go into medicine. Went to the American University in Beirut, and 2 years later, the war broke. Now, that was not a beautiful experience at all. And I ended up going to the US to finish the undergrad. Again, in the undergrad, once I got to university, a lot of studying, you are on campus, a lot of homework. This business of trying to go to church kind of disappeared. You're still kind of religious, you know, you pray before the exam, but nothing, no more, no less. And I went then to do the Ph.D. And I was in a lab called the Pit. Very patriarchal, very hierarchical. I was the Arab female, the only Arab female for quite a while. And there weren't any major issues except kind of this atheism that I encountered that didn't make sense to me. But there was never at any point a clash between worldviews. Science, that was part, as a matter of fact, most of the, I don't know how it is with the East Asians, but with Arabs, everyone wants to be a medical doctor or an engineer. You can be most religious, but of course you're going to do that. There's no, and then again, it was the question of evil, but at that time it wasn't, yeah, you know, there was no time to think, really. Even taking Sunday off from working in the lab was like, my professor would say, and where were you on Sunday? I say I was off. Because you really didn't have a life other than in the lab. And then one day my brother, and during that time my mother died. So the question again of evil, why would God take my mother, you know? And then a year after that, my brother calls and says, on the anniversary of my mom's death, I'm going to go and kill myself. I'm like, I really had a meltdown. And in the lab, I really didn't have friends. In that they were all male. I was considered the dumb woman amongst them. So there was no friends in. So I decided to go to the next door church. And I said, okay, I mean, what do? You go to the priest. So I called to the priest, a young man, maybe 5 years older than I. And I was blubbering and snooting, and I don't know what he understood in the middle of all these things and crying. And then he stops and I tell him, my brother wants to kill himself. What am I supposed to do? What the hell is God thinking? Anyway, so he stopped and he said, and what I remember from the conversation is one thing. He said, do you think God throws stones at us? I'm thinking, of course. I mean, what do you think all this evil is? Of course, these are stones. But after I went back, you know, I'm thinking, this priest, how can I be a priest and happy? I mean, what made him tick? And of course, I was also infatuated, but that's besides the point. So I start going to church and joining these faith journeys things. Okay. And no understanding that, and I finished the PhD and I got a postdoctoral fellowship at U of T, and I went to U of T in Toronto, and I hated every minute of it. And one time I was taking a trip around campus, and I went through and I saw this college, and I said, well, what do they teach? Oh, they teach theology. And I thought, oh, I don't want them to think that I want to be a priest, but let me go in. So I went in and I say, what do they do here? Oh, we teach theology. She looked at me and said, you're Catholic. And I'm like, what was it written here that I'm Catholic? Too submissive, what the hell? Anyway, she said, you'd better go to St. Mike's. So I went to St. Mike's and decided to take a class on Teresa of Avila. That was the first mistake. And I loved it very, very much. And I decided I'm going to leave this postdoctoral fellow, and I'm going to join the MDiv. And the teacher who was teaching the class, I said, I don't know how to write. I mean, you don't write in science, it's math. So I decided, so he stayed with me all during the summer to teach me how to write essays. And I applied and got accepted. My father got very, very angry. To him, religion is not something to peddle in. It is between you and God, you live it, but this business of studying and hoping maybe later on that you're going to make money out of it is totally unacceptable. And my father wouldn't speak to me for a year. And I told him, Dad, you wanted the PhD in science. Here it is. You can have the degree, hang it wherever you wish. I'm going to do what I want now. Anyway, so I studied, who is God? What is God? What is religion? I wanted, my reason to study was as part of my journey, my spiritual journey. But there were too many rules, and I wanted to know what is of God and what is of the rules, the cultural rules that we have. Are they of God? Because if you are a Middle Easterner, every cultural rule is a divine rule. There's no division. So I wanted to know these rules, whose is God and who's the culture. And I loved it. The 3 years passed although they were quite hefty, 5 classes. And there were 2 courses that were most important in my life as an MDiv. One was a class on world religions, Christ and world religions. And it was taught by a Jesuit who was a Muslim. So his mom was a Hindu. His dad was a Pentecostal priest that became Christian. He was a Muslim, became Christian. So his name was Father Muhammad. That would have not been acceptable in our country in any way, shape, or form. They asked him, shouldn't you change your name to a Christian name? He said, no, what's wrong with my name? So his name was Professor Ovi Muhammad, Indian guy, amazing sense of humor, deadly. And that was one of these things that were eye-opener. I already knew in my heart that what he said was correct, because we in Kuwait, we always had to ask, well, what is going to happen to the Muslims? My aunt would say they're going to go all to hell. Well, what do you mean? Well, when they come to death, they'll then discover the truth of Christ and they'll be all Christian and then they'll go to. Say, Auntie, that doesn't make sense. And part of the game was a very close friend of my father, who was a Muslim. And I kept thinking, I can't be kinder to this guy, to the friend of my parents, more than God. It does not make sense to me. And when I asked my dad, how many will go to hell? He said, we Catholic, probably 3 or 4 people of the whole world. Oh, yeah. So I thought, wow. So when my aunt spoke, I'm like, ugh. But in that class, I kind of was affirmed in that understanding. And the other class was a class that was also in the 4th year, and it was called the Dynamics of Theology. And again, it spoke about where did the doctrines come from? You know, how did they come to be? And to me, these were, because when I was doing the MDiv, it was beautiful, but there was some kind of a ceiling, a glass ceiling that could not be broken. With that class, with these two classes, the ceiling was broken. And I took liberation theology, and then all of a sudden, I don't know if people feel that, I felt proud of my God. It wasn't love, it was, man, I respect our God. That God is worthy of whatever, allegiance. Worship is not something that comes to mind, but allegiance, worthy of respect. There wasn't anything wrong with this God. Anyway, so I went into the PhD, and I kind of learned a lot, and the mystical strain remained. I had one mystical experience at the start, and I could never forget it, and it just stuck in my mind. And when I was doing the theology, even the PhD, the image comes to mind is like someone who goes into a church. And of course, we Catholic churches have very beautiful scenery, glass, panels. And to me, it was, this isn't God, this isn't God, this is not God, this is not God, until there is nothing left but you and God. In a sense, totally naked. Once you arrive to that, then you can go back and look at the church and see the beauty and power, but also the shortcoming. So there was an appreciation, but I'm not lost into it. If someone comes, the priest comes and say, you have to do this, there are many favorable words I would use. Ashley knows some of them. Then, so what I found is this worthy God. And anytime anyone comes and tells me, well, God is going to do this and God is going to do that, I usually tell them, well, I'd rather worship the tree because the tree does not harm, but your God obviously is harmful. Anyway, so I went into religious studies and I was exposed to other religions. Now, not from, as in from actually studying. So I took classes in Hinduism, classes in Buddhism, classes in Judaism, classes in Islam. And there was a marvelous appreciation. But also, I got into the philosophy, the critique of the Enlightenment. It is only in doing religious studies, not even theology, in doing religious studies, that this issue of the clash of science and religion came to the floor. I'm like, I never heard of that before. It didn't make sense until I studied religion, not even theology. It's in the religious studies that that issue came to be. And I'm like, there is no. And then this materialist worldview and the Enlightenment and so on, because I always thought the Enlightenment was good until I discovered that it really screwed up a lot of things. And again, I loved the teaching. I was still interested in the mystical because I wanted to see God. I wanted to see the face of God. So I got into the Nag Hammadi, the Gnostic Christians, did work on the Kabbalah, and then took a class with Adnan on Sufism. So that was one of my favorite things. The last and not least, then my aunt died, and I somehow joined a psychic group in Halifax. It was funny. I'm actually crowned. I was crowned as a crone, so that you know, expect respect. And it was these abilities of healing and talking and being able to channel. And again, it was a nice counter to this study of religion that was all in the head, you know. And I head is important, of course, but that's not where it is. It's in the heart. Anyway, so, and I liked their worldview. And now there are very strange people in that. Not strange as an evil, but strange. People think that they are, I don't know, the what are some of the things? The Atlantis is real. Some people are from outer space, the third generation. I mean, some crazy things. So I'm just sitting there and listening and taking it in. And to me, these are all pieces of the puzzle that cannot be discarded. I don't discard, neither intellectually nor anything, period. And it felt like the psychic in the West, in here in Halifax, was as if not so much the straitjacket of science, but the straitjacket of people in the arts, how they perceive science. Because I never thought of them as contradictory. I only discovered that they're contradictory when arts people speak about religion and science, not science people, not theology people. So it felt that this psychic was breaking this rationalist, materialist straitjacket. And I thought that was marvelous, you know, brilliant. And when someone came and said that they were, I don't know from where, Alpha Centaurian. And I remember going that day and say, look, I can handle the God, the creator of the earth and the universe. But once you start looking at the expansiveness of the universe, I can't handle that God. That's too much. Just creation of earth is enough. I can handle that. But it says how we like to curb that power. And of course, in the psychic, they use the word spirit instead of God. They don't use the word God, because God is what you find in the churches that are abusive, pedophiles, blah, blah, blah. But the spirit is, and I said, okay, fine, I can live with the spirit, no big deal. So what I found, and again with the mystics, with the psychics, the importance of meditation, the importance of healing, you connect to other realities. And I thought I love that, I like that. So what I want to say in this journey, that no one step voided or denied the steps before. Every step was an expansion of the world before. And even the pieces that I don't particularly understand, I put, there is a big picture, and it's a three-dimensional picture, it's not flat. So if things connect that I have no idea. Now, what I found with the psychic groups is still the straitjacket of science was important. So they wanted to prove that the experiences are real scientifically. So they jump on all physicists speak about energy, everything is energy. I said, well, yeah, I like the issue of energy. It explains it, nice. But do I need an explanation all the time for everything? And I'm thinking, no, just, I mean, there are times that you need an explanation when you're going out to harm others collectively or individually. But in that's fine. I can live with it. And then to me, everything and everyone and every attempt to reach is of God, is a manifestation of God. Now, there are some better than others. I mean, I haven't figured out yet Trump's manifestation of God yet. So I'm working on that. For the time being, he's an asshole. We're going to leave him there. So to me, it's not about the rules. It's not about you're doing it this way or that way. It's about, you know, you respect this God, you love this God, you give allegiance. And to me, that was the most important thing, is that I was proud of God. So when someone says God is going to do this and burn us in hell, I'm like, you're not talking about mine, you're talking about someone else, and I think you're wrong. So that's so the expansion is not only on the mind, the intellectual, because after a while you find is that there are a lot of words, there are a lot of books, there are libraries, and what is required is very simple: a heart. So anyways, and that brings us to here. I love the students in the class. I just want to get back to the statement of this is not what I chose. It's what I did not choose teaching. I think I'm a good teacher, but that was not my passion. Until my passion was to make soap. I love making soap. I love handcrafts. I love these things. And then I sat one day and said, okay, you have a magical wand. What would you like to do? So I said, if I had a magical wand, I would open a soap factory. And immediately the answer came, but that's a waste of what you have. And that's when I figured out that where I am is actually the best way to use what I had, which is a humongous amount of education. So this is it. Any questions? I'm open. Any critiques? I'm open. I'm looking at the watch. We've got some time, so that's why I ran through it a little bit fast. Anyways.
Oh, that was so wonderful. Thank you so much, Maggie. I have a lot of questions. I would imagine others do as well. I don't think anyone could critique your personal journey. I would hope not, because that's so, yeah, personal journeys are just that. I love that you blended, that you really noted that everything is not exclusive of one another. And I think in the West, we're really guilty of that. We love to put things in boxes and label them, and whether it's science and religion or this or that, so I think it's really amazing to hear you talk about how both of those fit into your life and how they can be complementary and how you don't have to have an answer to why something is the way that it is necessarily in order for it to impact your life and be meaningful. With that said, does anybody have any specific questions that they'd like to ask Maggie? Sai, yeah.
First of all, that was really great, and I really liked your kind of stoic, deadpan delivery of funny punchlines. And I also wanted to say that I do share you said that you really wanted to see the face of God, like in a way, in a sense, naked, just you and God. I really share that, and that's one like deep desire I have. Not God per se, but at least some higher level of consciousness, which I feel is there, but that spiritual experience. And one of my questions is that you said you had one mystical experience and it stayed with you. If it's not too personal, if you can elaborate on that, that's one of my questions. And the other one, what happened to your brother? Just out of curiosity, I mean.
No, he lived. He got married. He has a son who is doing astrophysics and is going to Chile to do some astronomy. He survived it. It's I who kind of got distracted. Well, the one and only mystical experience was at the time I was transitioning. And I think that anytime there is a community in crisis and they seek, there is a way that the universe, God, the spirit will answer. And I was in one of my meditations, and all of a sudden I was in a place that was all snow as far as the eye can see. And I was huddled in my coat, and I'm looking around and there's nothing but snow. That's why I love snow, because it just brings that experience back. And all of a sudden there was a feeling, a very strong sense. And the sense was, oh my God, this is so humongous. And all the books we have do not even come close in describing what I have experienced. And then I was conscious. I was saying, okay, Maggie, put it in words, because once that experience goes, you're not going to remember, because the feeling. So I kind of, the words that came was, I am lost and now I was found by God. And in a sense, it affirmed that I am on the right track where I'm heading, because I really never liked chemistry. That was not my world. I liked being in the lab, but I didn't like Toronto at all, nor did I like the scientific, but it brought to mind Aquinas at the end of his life, having written all these books. He had this experience, and the experience was all these books were just straws. They're just ink spilt on paper. They are jumbled. There is nothing that can come close to the reality. And that's how I felt. And then I started the Ph.D. and I thought, a couple of more experiences of this mystical, I'm not going to finish the PhD. So as I go into the meditation, I'm scared, because 2 more and I'll discover that what I'm doing is really worthless. Yeah. Which is really, in the bigger reality of things, it is. So I said, okay, let's cool off with the mystical until we finish the PhD, then maybe we'll go back and see what happens. So that's what I have been. I actually had Adnan a couple of weeks back share with me some marijuana. I thought that was brilliant. The one and only time. So yes, it's an experience, and the thing is that once you start talking and reading about other religious traditions, you find it's there. The yogi is not one carrying books and running around, this is the reality and I'm going around with it. The yogi, after a while, throws all the books out. You have learned, now what happened to your heart? So it's the heart. So I am still looking for God, unless God decided to punish me for having kind of waned and wanted to finish the PhD first, but I don't think so. So I'm looking forward.
It's amazing. It's fascinating.
Asfar, yeah.
Thanks, Maggie. It's an amazing journey. I think you can actually, what should I say? I mean, this can be example for so many, because when you were telling that part of yours that you had a doctorate in chemistry, you tried to proceed career on that, but at some point you were not enjoying. So, apart from the religious or other perspectives, this one thing is also inspiring for so many of us, that we need to follow our passion and our choice. And so overall, the way you told us, so as I would just like to echo with sir, that your delivery, that is awesome, and of course your life history is more than awesome. I was wondering just one thing. Maybe you did not enjoy that much the science study, the chemistry, but at least you finished certain level of study in that. So when you are actually going deep into religion, did it ever raise any doubt in yourself about the scientific concepts? For example, maybe in chemistry, if I just give one example, we consider that there are fixed number of elements in the world. So when you are actually studying all the religion, did you ever have any doubt that is that right, that what I read, the world can be vast enough? Is science actually defining the world in the right manner? Did you ever have any sort of doubt like that?
No, because I thought, and what I came to articulate later on when I was doing religion, is that the problem that happened with science, or unfortunately, not so much science, but the people in arts, their conception of science, is that the scientific method works. We reduce, I mean, this is how we work. You reduce a complex thing to smaller options. So I know that from day one that scientific method is reductive. I know it because when I'm working in the lab, I was in biochem with working with DNA. I know that if I want to do a test, I need to control it by removing this, that, or the other, by making them constant. So I understood from day one that it is reductive. Now, what happened with people in arts thinking about science is, well, science is working with the material world. Well, then the world must be material. And that's not what the scientists were doing or saying. That's what the arts are thinking that the science are saying. Because it never, when we were growing up, it was never a problem. It's what happens is that, and now I can articulate by saying that the scientific method and the scientific subject upon which we study, which is the material aspect, became a worldview. It jumped into something it was not supposed to be. It's not supposed to be a worldview. It is supposed to be working with a reduced understanding of the real. Mm-hmm. And I can say that now. I'm going to put a class on science and religion, and I'm going to say the problem is not with the scientists. I mean, you'll find scientists that are atheists, but you're going to find also scientists that are very religious. So how did they figure that out? Because the world is not understood. The worldview is not material. It is only that I, as a scientist, have to reduce this very complex world into the things that I can test in lab. And the tests I can test in lab are physical. Don't deny the spirit. You don't deny anything, nor do you try to prove anything more than what your method can give you. But the minute you go into religious studies or sociology or psychology, all those people that are trying to explain away religion as either people require psychological hangers or whatever. It is their understanding that now the world is material. And I'm thinking, that's your problem, not mine. That's a mistake you have done, but that was also part of the Enlightenment. So that was part of the problems. And what I learned is that how your philosophy, how your culture, how your worldviews affect how you think. And at one point, you need to say, this particular, I mean, they may be good with reason, but they were lousy with the material. Yes, when we studied then gender and Orientalism, but there was a problem with reason too. So that no tool is absolute. And the more I kind of know, the more I know less. So you're always wanting to learn without excluding. So what not the scientists, I have to be very careful, not the scientists, but the perception of science from the arts is that they take what science as a method, they made it into a worldview. And then they say, well, there is a problem. The world is material and the religious people are saying there are spirits and gods and whatever. Then how are we going to study that? And then we've got all hell breaks loose.
Ellie, you have a question, looks like.
Yes, please. I find this fascinating, Maggie. Thank you so much for providing that perspective. And I've often, for many years, been bothered by this, what I consider a artificial division between science and religion. But I also see that religion has a part to play, and out of Enlightenment also came, in Christianity, in the Western world, came fundamentalism, which is actually a very specific form of Christianity, and it's very technical. So they believe in 7 things, and so and now it means just anybody who's quite conservative. But it's my sense is also that faith, religion has tried to be all things. So faith is not meant, my Bible, which is my holy book, is not meant to answer question about evolution. And so I'm just interested in your perspective on the role of religion in that. And my example is Christianity, but
absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. The one thing that is important is whenever I see someone who is very much against the evolution and wants to hold to religion so hard, you always, or fundamentalism, you will always find a world in turmoil. It's always, when you are in a place where everything is upside down and there are wars and you have no idea, the straw that you attach yourself to tends to be religion. Not even God, but religion. Because religion gives you rules. Do this, do that, do that. I know where the hell I stand. Mm-hmm. So, turmoil. You can go and become a god, and genetic engineering. You don't believe it. The minute you say it's either this or that, it depends where you stand. I mean, you put it in a binary. It's either religion or science. Well, if you're a science, you're gonna say, well, I don't know what you're talking about. Or if you're very religionist, you're gonna say science is wrong. And the way you get them together, well, the year in God's time, maybe 7,000 years. Crap. It's not. This is saying something, and the recognition that all books of God are also not God. It has a historical context. So that part of the thing of saying this is not God is also scripture. This is not the divine. This is not the spirit. To stand naked is you don't hold that book either. So that, and I find the most amazing is the mystical, because you break all these ceilings that you have, that we have built by culture, by science, by worldviews, by whatever crap. And then everything, including the Bible, becomes ink on paper.
But he just said that he just messaged me to say that he had to go, but thank you, and he really enjoyed this. So, yeah.
Any other questions? Go ahead.
I have a question. What would you say is something that you specifically had to go with the witch group to learn? What is something from your time there that has stayed with you?
It was, to me, the Western response to two things. The world that has become so inanimate and cold, and the culture of running around and money, but also the response to saying, we experience the Spirit different to what has been done in the churches. We have been excluded for whatever reason. So it's, I want to say it's again the reality that breaks the straight jacket of the church or religion, or well, no, we can't have the gays, oh no, we can't have this, or no, these people are evil. I'm like, what the hell? No, that is just not the reality. It's open. And the whole thing of the ecofeminism in Christian theology that came was the recognition that after a while, look, it was the natives were treating the earth better than us. The natives that saw the air and the water as gods and goddesses that cannot be just used for us. These are divine realities. That didn't come from Christianity. That came from Christianity in dialogue with the natives. So that all the world of the natives and the shaman and the experiences of other realities and ability to heal. But they didn't like the word God. So it, to me, was a mysticism without the word God. They liked the Spirit. But they still, to the material, the group that I went to are still held by the straight jacket of science, but they are coming out of the seams as they are, So again, it's not either or. The binary, the Western mind likes binaries. I mean, look at our movies, either good or bad, evil or whatever. And then we have the right to take the gun and shoot the evil. It's not even the two coming together. It's about 500,000 coming together. We only know two of them. And it teaches humility.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Sitting back down.
I think humility for me is a key word in all of this. Is we put everything in boxes. We put everything with an identity, and then we get very attached to that identity, which often becomes a belief system. And what I really feel like I see, whether it's on social media or in conversations that people have, is like, life is materialism, or life is this, or things are like this, or like fascists and Antifa, and like there's just I feel like, and maybe I don't know if you have a response to this, but it feels to me like there's a lot of fear around just how complex the world is, and that people need to have systems and answers in boxes to feel a sense of comfort, and that
Control.
is actually hurting us rather than helping us move forward.
Absolutely. And the more turmoil, we humans want certainty. We want to know. That's part of who we are. I mean, Eve ate from the apple because she wanted to know. We're all in the same boat. But the point is, yeah, go for the knowledge, go. But if it doesn't teach you wisdom and it makes you into someone who is for control and killing everyone, we've got a problem. Go for the knowledge. But it is not in the final analysis that will give you the sense of security. We need to be secure. Look,
Mm-hmm.
I want something that I know will not change. That's why the fundamentalists become very strong in times that like we are in. And the more we have in COVID, the more you're gonna find them. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I'm drowning. I'm gonna have to hold to something. The only problem is what we hold to ends up being destroying us more than helping us. Maybe we are meant to be dropped in the middle of the ocean and learn how to swim. Don't know. One step at a time. I used to tell my students, one piece of shit at a time. I don't have to answer all the things on the table. Let me just survive one at a time.
I recognize that it's about 3:05 and I want to respect people's time, but I have one final question and then we can kind of wrap up. So if anybody has anything else that they'd like to quickly add, but I think a question that I have that might wrap up a bit of the conversation is what sort of advice do you have? Because you seem to be someone who's very comfortable with uncertainty. And I think a lot of us are not naturally, which is, I think, very human. So what sort of wisdom or advice do you have for people to sort of let go of this need for answers and certainty and embrace all of these questions?
I am not good with uncertainty. I may look that I have my shit together. Actually, it is not. I find when I am two things. I find that meditation grounds me. I call it the spiritual flush. The bowel movement of the spirit is meditation. You get rid of the crap that is accumulating. But the other thing is, I found that when you are helping one person, I mean, yesterday we had to run to send something to Kuwait and we're running around and I'm losing my mind. I find that's what grounds me. Is not, I mean, we're not called to be navel gazing, really. We're called to see God in the other. So whatever there is a possibility of doing something, or whether you're fighting for justice, whether you are, the Messiah complex I never had. But if there is someone within my mile radius that needs something, I'm going to do it. I found my happiness with the students that I end up loving, not just liking. It always reminded me of the story of, I think it was Augustine. You know, the guy goes to the waterfront and sees all these crabs washed on the shore, and he picks one crab at a time. And the guy says, there is no way in hell. See the millions of crabs, but I made a difference to this particular crab. And if we concentrate on one crab at it, there are gonna be people who can do the big things for all the crabs. I am one crab at a time.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, and thank you, everybody. So I guess if Ellie wants to maybe mention who is up for next week, and then we can stop the recording, and then if anybody just has any sort of last comments or anything, we can chat for a few more minutes, and then we will get on with our day.
Sounds good.
Awesome. That was wonderful. Thank you, Maggie. And I think it was also, it said a lot without speaking much about COVID, but it spoke a lot to our times and the anxiety and the questions many of us have. So thank you very much for your wisdom. And so next week we have another guest. So next week we have Ilona Doherty. Ilona is actually a former Concordia student, and she she's working at the University of Waterloo, working with youth, youth and innovation. And I have been following her since she left Concordia, because the other organization she started and she co-founded is Apathy is Boring. So that's an organization trying to get young people involved in politics and in the democratic process. So she's been really involved with youth and young adults, and also has then moved into intergenerational work. So workshop is on intergenerational solidarity, and I think it's going to be another great conversation. And I also want to give you all a heads up and a public service announcement, because the week after is our big multi-faith fair, Discover Multi-Faith. So it's a 3-day event this year, with workshops and events to do what we already do every Tuesday afternoon, but expand it. So we have we do fun activities like quizzes and the wheel. Where's the wheel? Behind me here, the conversation wheel. We have a cafe with Angie Balata, who comes from the In Spirit Foundation, an organization working on diversity, particularly around race, religion, and gender in Toronto. We have a discussion on an interfaith panel on peace, honoring Remembrance Day. We have speed faithing, where we get to talk to people of different practitioners of different faiths, and lots of other fun events. So this is our big event coming up, and we really want to invite you. I believe the registration is now going live either today or tomorrow, and we also need volunteers. So we'd love it if you said, talk to us, talk to Ashley or I. We need people to be present. We need hosts just to guide people around on various platforms. We need people willing to share some of their stories with them. And whether share your story, whether you're devoted in one faith, grew up in one faith, kind of stick to it, consider yourself atheist, philosophical, everyone is welcome, because we all contribute to those questions that Maggie raised. How do we live in this world that so often seeks to divide us, and that wants us to just always gain clarity, while really it is a world full of ambiguity and wonder. So I'll leave it at that, but do stay posted for lots of social media posts. And if you're interested, with Ashley and I would love to hear from you.